The moment you look up at the night sky and realize that thousands of satellites are silently moving above you, working together to deliver internet to the most remote places on Earth, you begin to understand that Starlink is not just a product, but a bold statement about how the future is built. This is not the kind of system that appears overnight, nor is it something that can be easily copied by writing a large check or hiring a talented engineering team. Starlink exists because of a mindset that challenges limits, questions assumptions, and refuses to accept that certain things are impossible. At its core, this story is about ambition meeting reality, and about why even the biggest technology companies struggle to follow the same path. When people ask why Starlink is hard to copy, the answer is not simple, because it is layered with technology, money, time, and an unusual willingness to take risks that most corporations avoid. It begins with the understanding that global satellite internet is not just about launching objects into space, but about orchestrating a living, constantly evolving system that must work flawlessly every second of every day. The technical challenges alone create a wall that stops most competitors before they even begin. Starlink satellites are not traditional space hardware designed to last quietly for decades in orbit. They are built to be produced rapidly, upgraded frequently, and replaced continuously. This approach requires advanced manufacturing techniques, custom-designed electronics, and software that can autonomously manage thousands of fast-moving objects traveling at extreme speeds. Each satellite must communicate with others, avoid collisions, adjust its orbit, and deliver stable internet signals to users on the ground, all while being exposed to radiation, temperature extremes, and the harsh reality of space. Building one satellite is difficult. Building thousands that function as a single network is something entirely different. Many large tech companies excel at software or consumer hardware, but space systems demand a rare blend of aerospace engineering, real-time networking, and operational discipline that cannot be learned quickly. Then there is the financial reality, which is often misunderstood. Starlink is not profitable because it was cheap to build. It exists because enormous investments were made long before any meaningful return was possible. Developing the satellites, building ground stations, creating user terminals, and launching everything into orbit required billions of dollars with no guarantee of success. For most public companies, this kind of long-term risk is unacceptable. Shareholders expect predictable growth, steady returns, and clear timelines. Starlink, on the other hand, required patience on a scale that few organizations can tolerate. Years passed with no revenue at all, only expenses and uncertainty. This willingness to absorb losses in pursuit of a larger vision is one of the hidden barriers that keeps competitors away, because money alone is not enough if it comes with fear and hesitation attached. Launch capability adds another layer of difficulty that is often overlooked. Satellites do not magically appear in orbit. They must be carried there by rockets, and rockets are expensive, complex, and unforgiving machines. Most companies rely on third-party launch providers, which means waiting for available launch windows, paying high prices, and accepting limited flexibility. Starlink does not face this constraint in the same way, because SpaceX controls its own launch vehicles. Reusable rockets dramatically reduce costs and allow frequent launches, enabling rapid deployment and constant expansion of the network. This advantage is not something that can be easily purchased or replicated. Building a reliable launch system takes years of testing, failure, and iteration, and even small mistakes can lead to catastrophic losses. For competitors, every launch represents a significant financial and reputational risk, while for Starlink, it is part of a routine process. What truly sets Starlink apart, however, is the way all these elements come together under one integrated strategy. SpaceX designs the satellites, builds them in-house, launches them on its own rockets, and operates the network itself. This vertical integration allows problems to be solved quickly, costs to be controlled tightly, and innovations to be implemented without waiting for external partners. When something does not work, the feedback loop is short and direct, enabling rapid improvement. This kind of organizational structure is rare, especially at such a large scale, because it requires trust in teams, tolerance for failure, and a clear, unified vision. It reflects a philosophy often associated with Elon Musk, that progress accelerates when barriers between ideas and execution are removed. Instead of outsourcing complexity, Starlink embraces it, turning what others see as obstacles into sources of strength. As you consider all these factors together, it becomes clear that Starlink's leadership is not an accident or a temporary advantage. It is the result of years of deliberate choices that prioritized long-term impact over short-term comfort. The technology is advanced, the financial commitment is immense, and the operational demands are relentless. Yet beneath all of this lies a deeper lesson about innovation itself. True breakthroughs rarely come from following established paths. They emerge when someone is willing to rethink the entire system from the ground up. Starlink is difficult to copy because it represents more than a network of satellites. It represents a way of thinking that challenges conventional wisdom. And as the story continues to unfold, one question lingers in the background, quietly building suspense. If this is only the beginning, what happens when the system grows even larger, faster, and more deeply woven into the fabric of everyday life? As the system expands and the constellation grows denser, the challenge for anyone hoping to compete with Starlink becomes even more intimidating, because momentum in space is not just physical but strategic. Every new satellite launched does more than add coverage. It strengthens the network, improves reliability, and generates data that feeds back into better design decisions. This creates a compounding advantage that is extremely difficult to interrupt. Competitors are not simply starting from zero. They are starting while the target is moving faster every day. The reality is that catching up in space is unlike catching up in software or consumer electronics, where a clever update or viral product can close the gap. In orbital infrastructure, time itself becomes an enemy, and delays are punished harshly. Miss one launch window, one development cycle, or one critical improvement, and the distance widens further. One of the least discussed but most powerful advantages Starlink holds is operational experience at scale. Running a massive satellite network is not a theoretical exercise. It is an ongoing battle against complexity. Satellites must be monitored, adjusted, deorbited when necessary, and replaced before failures cascade into service disruptions. Ground stations must coordinate seamlessly, software updates must be deployed without interruption, and regulatory requirements across dozens of countries must be navigated carefully. Each of these challenges produces lessons that cannot be learned from simulations or small pilot projects. They require real-world exposure, real failures, and real consequences. Starlink has already lived through these experiences, while most competitors are still designing their first test systems. Experience, once gained, becomes a silent shield that protects the leader and frustrates those trying to follow. Financial pressure intensifies as competitors attempt to scale. Initial funding might cover early prototypes or limited launches, but sustaining a global satellite network demands continuous capital. Satellites have finite lifespans, meaning replacement is not optional but inevitable. Launch costs, even when reduced, remain significant. Customer acquisition, hardware subsidies, and ground infrastructure all require ongoing investment. For companies without their own launch capabilities, every expansion becomes more expensive and slower. Investors begin to ask difficult questions, patience wears thin, and priorities shift. This is where many ambitious projects quietly lose momentum. Starlink, supported by a broader vision and reinforced by internal launch efficiency, is able to absorb these pressures more effectively. The financial strain does not disappear, but it becomes manageable within a larger strategic framework. Suspense enters the story when you consider how close competitors sometimes appear to be, at least on paper. Announcements are made, partnerships are revealed, and headlines suggest that a serious challenger is finally emerging. For a moment, it feels as though the balance might shift. But then reality intervenes. Manufacturing delays push timelines back. Regulatory approvals take longer than expected. Launch schedules slip. Technical issues surface during testing. Each setback may seem small on its own, but together they form a pattern that is difficult to escape. Meanwhile, Starlink continues launching, refining, and expanding, almost indifferent to the noise. The gap, instead of closing, quietly grows wider, and the suspense resolves not with a dramatic confrontation, but with a slow realization that leadership has become entrenched. At the center of this dynamic lies a philosophical difference in how risk is understood and embraced. Many large corporations are optimized to minimize failure, protect existing revenue streams, and avoid bold moves that could disrupt internal stability. Starlink exists because SpaceX was willing to accept repeated failures as part of the process. Rockets exploded, prototypes were lost, and early designs were discarded without hesitation. This tolerance for failure accelerates learning and enables rapid improvement. It aligns closely with the broader approach often associated with Elon Musk, where the focus is not on avoiding mistakes, but on making them quickly, understanding them deeply, and moving forward stronger. This mindset is difficult to adopt in organizations built around predictability and control. Another critical factor is the integration of hardware and software at every level. Starlink's user terminals, satellites, and network management systems are designed together, not as separate products stitched into a fragile whole. This allows performance optimizations that competitors struggle to replicate when relying on multiple vendors and fragmented teams. Updates can be rolled out across the system with precision, improving speed, latency, and reliability without waiting for external approval. Over time, these incremental gains accumulate into a noticeable difference in user experience. Customers may not understand the technical details, but they feel the result, and that perception reinforces Starlink's position in the market. As more users join the network, another subtle advantage emerges: trust. Reliability builds confidence, and confidence reduces hesitation. Governments, businesses, and individuals become more willing to depend on a system that has already proven itself under pressure. This trust is not easily transferred or copied. It must be earned through consistent performance, especially in challenging environments. Each successful deployment in a remote village, disaster zone, or moving vehicle strengthens the narrative that Starlink works where others cannot. Competitors, still proving their concepts, face skepticism that slows adoption and limits feedback, further delaying improvement. By the time all these elements are considered together, the picture becomes clear and unsettling for anyone hoping to compete. The challenge is no longer just technical, financial, or logistical. It is systemic. Starlink's lead is reinforced by experience, integration, philosophy, and momentum, all moving in the same direction. The question is no longer whether others can build satellites, but whether they can build an entire ecosystem that evolves faster than the one already in place. And as this realization settles in, a deeper suspense lingers beneath the surface, hinting that the true implications of Starlink's dominance may extend far beyond internet access alone. When you step back and look at the broader picture, Starlink's dominance begins to feel less like a competitive advantage and more like the early foundation of a new global infrastructure, one that quietly reshapes how humanity connects, communicates, and responds to uncertainty. This is where the story moves beyond satellites and signals and enters a deeper, more philosophical space. Starlink is not simply solving today's internet problems. It is preparing for scenarios most people never think about. Remote education, emergency response, scientific exploration, and economic inclusion all depend on connectivity. And when traditional systems fail or fall short, satellite networks become more than a convenience. They become a lifeline. Understanding this long-term implication helps explain why copying Starlink is not just difficult, but fundamentally misaligned with how most organizations plan their futures. The scale of vision required to sustain such a project forces uncomfortable questions on competitors. Are they willing to invest for decades rather than quarters? Are they prepared to build systems that may not show their full value until global behavior shifts? Starlink exists because its creators were willing to operate in that uncomfortable space, where certainty is low but potential impact is massive. This mindset treats the present as a stepping stone rather than a destination. While others focus on market share, Starlink focuses on capability. While others measure success in short-term metrics, Starlink measures progress in systems that grow stronger under stress. This difference in perspective shapes every decision, from engineering priorities to deployment strategies, and it is one of the most difficult elements to replicate. Another reason Starlink continues to pull ahead is its relationship with failure and adaptation. In most industries, failure triggers caution and retreat. In this ecosystem, failure becomes data. Satellites that underperform are not embarrassments, they are lessons. Software issues are not crises. They are opportunities to improve resilience. This constant cycle of testing, learning, and refining creates a system that evolves faster than any static plan could allow. It reflects a belief that progress is non-linear, and that resilience comes from exposure to real-world complexity, not protection from it. This belief, often linked to the broader philosophy associated with Elon Musk, challenges traditional business logic and replaces it with a model that prioritizes speed of learning over comfort. As Starlink matures, its influence begins to ripple outward, affecting industries and policies in unexpected ways. Governments must rethink how they regulate space-based infrastructure. Telecom companies must reconsider their assumptions about coverage and pricing. Even consumers start to adjust their expectations, realizing that reliable internet is no longer confined to cities or fiber lines. These shifts create a reinforcing loop that favors the established leader. When standards change, those who set them gain an advantage that is subtle but powerful. Competitors are forced to respond rather than lead, adjusting their plans to fit a reality already shaped by someone else's choices. There is also a human element that often goes unnoticed. Behind every satellite launch and software update are teams operating with a shared sense of purpose. Building something this complex requires alignment, trust, and a willingness to push beyond job descriptions. People working on Starlink are not just maintaining a service, they are contributing to a vision that connects the planet. This sense of meaning attracts talent that thrives on challenge and impact. Over time, this cultural advantage compounds, just like the technical and operational ones. Competitors may match budgets or hire experts, but culture cannot be purchased or copied quickly. It grows from consistent leadership, clear goals, and the freedom to take bold action. As the constellation continues to expand and the network becomes more capable, a quiet truth emerges. The question is no longer whether Starlink will succeed, but how deeply it will integrate into the fabric of daily life. From ships at sea to communities cut off by geography or disaster, the system is positioning itself as a default solution where alternatives fail. This creates a level of dependency that reinforces leadership and discourages fragmentation. Once people rely on a system that works everywhere, the incentive to switch diminishes dramatically. Competitors may offer comparable features, but matching reliability at scale remains an elusive goal. Ultimately, the reason Starlink is hard to copy is not because it is protected by secrets or luck, but because it is the result of a rare alignment between vision, execution, and persistence. It challenges the idea that innovation must be safe, gradual, or universally accepted before it begins. Instead, it demonstrates that transformative systems are built by those willing to endure uncertainty and criticism in pursuit of something larger. This is the deeper lesson hidden beneath the technology, one that extends far beyond satellite internet and into the future of how ambitious ideas are brought to life. As you reflect on this journey, from the first launches to the growing global network overhead, it becomes clear that Starlink is not just ahead of its competitors. It is playing a different game entirely. It invites you to reconsider what is possible when long-term thinking replaces short-term fear, and when bold action replaces cautious imitation. If you are benefiting from our topics, please subscribe, like, and turn on the bell notification so you can see our new videos early.